I'm back. And I didn't mean to take that much time off. Okay, I didn't mean to go on a hiatus. Please excuse my absence. So sorry for anyone who is waiting. But I'm back, and I'm happy to be back. And I've brought you guys a magnificent case. Okay, and before anybody addresses it, the hair is still here. I still have hair. Okay, because I know somebody was gonna say it. She's got a bob. Yes, and I would look fabulous with a bob. Thank you very much. Okay, calm down. But on a better note, welcome back to another episode of Lipstick and Roller. Roll the intro. Did I roll it? Was it good? It was probably good. It was definitely good. Anyway, today we are covering a case that is always on my mind. Ever since I've watched this documentary about roughly maybe a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago, I have been obsessed. It lives rent-free in my noggin. In the wise words of Bailey Sarian, it's been heavy on my noggin. And I just needed to talk about it. I saw it and I knew I needed to. Because honestly, I couldn't find that many videos on YouTube about it. Like, maybe a handful. And a couple podcast episodes. But like, not nearly enough as it should have. Because realistically, this case is crazy. It is the case of Teresa Ann Bier, aka Bigfoot took her. The girl who was kidnapped by Bigfoot. And yes, you heard me right, folks. I said Bigfoot. Bigfoot, as in Sasquatch. As in the American legend of the giant monkey man thing that lives in the woods and howls. That. Bigfoot. Yeah. And honestly, it's never been solved. She's still missing to this day. Because people genuinely believed at the time that Bigfoot took her. Which, I'm as confused as you, girl. It was same boat. What? Bigfoot? Who? What? Teresa? What's happening? So that's the case we're going to be covering today. And as with all of my videos, every source that I use will be linked down below, as well as all the info to report anything, as well as the case number and all that stuff. So if you know anything or know someone who knows anything, even though this case is from a while ago, still, I'm going to put it all down below. So make sure to check that out. And without further ado, let's get into the case.
And welcome back, voice over me. Also, I'm using a different mic for this, so if it sounds different than the intro, that would be why. Anyway, enough of my yapping. I did enough of that in the intro. Today's case is that of Teresa Ann Bier. And let me tell you guys, I don't have 1 page of notes on this. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages of notes, front and back, okay? I was not playing when I said this case has been plaguing my mind. So who was Teresa Ann Bier? She was a 16-year-old girl. She disappeared in 1987 while hiking in the Sierra Nevada mountain range. She was born April 16th, 1971, which makes her a Taurus, so shout out to all my Tauruses in the world. She lived most of her life in Fresno, California, and she had a very unstable childhood. She moved from home to home. She suffered severe abuse at pretty much all stages of her life. And honestly, this poor girl could not catch a break. During Teresa's very early adolescent days, reports from CPS indicated that her mother, Shirley Bier, inflicted several physical injuries during her infancy. These included a broken leg, several broken ribs, and many cuts and bruises, all before she turned 4 years old. As a result, CPS was called on her and placed Teresa and her siblings into foster care, and this was supposed to be, the saving grace for Teresa, but only ended up bringing her more and more problems. And the reason CPS was originally called was due to her mother actually twisting Teresa's leg around a crib bar and effectively snapping it. So she had to be taken to the hospital, and the hospital informed police, who informed CPS, and her and her siblings did end up in foster care. And Teresa saw most of her siblings never again. Like, they never ever saw each other again, except for her sister Vicky, who ended up in the care of a church friend along with Teresa, whose name was Sylvia Pierce. And they also, I believe, both ended up at their grandparents' house for a short amount of time. After being in foster care for a little bit, Teresa's dad did pick her up and take her in for a while, but this proved to be not an amazing place for her because her father's girlfriend at the time was also abusive to the children, so she ended up back in foster care, back with Sylvia Pierce eventually, then with her grandparents, and then ended up in the care of someone called Blind Johnny, who is sort of a big player in this story. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you a little bit about Blind Johnny and his alleged blindness. It is very unclear whether Blind Johnny was actually blind or partially blind or not blind at all. He wore very dark sunglasses for pretty much all the time you saw him. If you saw Blind Johnny, he probably had dark sunglasses on. And it really depended on who you asked what the story of how he lost his vision was. Sometimes he said he got shot. Sometimes he said he shot himself while playing Russian roulette. Sometimes he said he got into a fight where his eyesight was then taken by some injury. And sometimes he said that he just gradually lost it throughout the years. So it really depended on who you asked, but the main consensus throughout everybody in his life was that he could still see partially, but mostly pretended to be blind to seem unassuming or more friendly to people around him and police. And this will make a little bit more sense when you find out that Blind Johnny was considered a drug lord in Fresno, California. And I don't mean he's smoking the devil's lettuce and dealing the devil's lettuce. I mean he was doing meth, crystal meth, and probably a lot of other hard drugs, but his drug of choice was meth. He liked to do it, he liked to deal it, and he was always high on it. Blind Johnny lived with his children and his ex-wife, as well as his 17-year-old girlfriend, Tamara. And yes, I said 17-year-old girlfriend. This man is 42 years old at the time of this story, and he has a 17-year-old girlfriend. Yeah, let that sink in. This man is sick, and he has children in his care. I couldn't find the exact number, but I knew there is little boys and I believe one other girl along with Teresa who are in his care, but I couldn't confirm exactly how many children he had. It kind of varied source to source, so I really don't know, but I do know that Blind Johnny did have children, and that he would often force Teresa to skip school to babysit these children, which I don't even understand how he gets away with that, but he does. And also, he would allegedly, and I say allegedly because this was in an interview with Tamara that she said this, so it's whether you trust her word or not, but it was said that he would give the drugs to the girls to go drop them off because, and I quote, little girls couldn't get in trouble, end quote. That is what he told Tamara, was that he'd send Tamara and Teresa and if there was another little girl there, all to basically drop off his drug orders because little girls couldn't get in trouble. Teresa at this time was considered developmentally behind and a slow learner. She was only 5'5" and 110 pounds, and her upper front teeth protruded out of her mouth just slightly. She had a little bit of an overbite, and she had a surgical scar down her leg from where she had to get it fixed as a child. But other than that, she seemed like a pretty typical young girl. Obviously, living in these conditions is going to do some sort of damage to your mental well-being. But she did have friends that she hung out with. She did do pretty okay in school. And overall seemed like a okay regular teenage girl to most people who knew her. But obviously, we know, living with this man, she couldn't have been too alright. But nothing seemed terribly out of the ordinary to the random passerby. And now I want to introduce you to our third key player in this story, which is Skip, aka Russell Shelton Welch. He was a house painter who was obsessed with Bigfoot. He was 43 years of age, so around Blind Johnny's age, and he spent most of his time completely entranced by the American legend of Sasquatch, or Bigfoot. He was a husband and a father and was known around town for being a bit strange. He mainly lived off disability checks and was allegedly addicted to meth, much like Blind Johnny. In early June of 1987, Teresa told friends she was going on a trip up to the Sierra Nevada mountain range to see Bigfoot with Skip as her guide. This wasn't too terribly unusual because Skip was an outdoors man and a lot of people called him a mountain man, and he did often take people up into the Sierra Nevada mountain range to show them a place he liked to call Ghost Canyon, where he had alleged to see Bigfoot many of times. On the morning of June 1st, Skip arrived to Blind Johnny's residence. Blind Johnny and Skip had been alleged to be friends and even drug buddies, which would make sense because they both were addicted to meth. He had noticed Teresa getting ready for school and offered to give her a ride. This was a decision that was pre-agreed on between Teresa and Skip. It was not said if Blind Johnny knew, but I don't believe that Blind Johnny knew that this was an arrangement, but both of them had planned for Skip to show up at the house, offer to give her a ride to school, and then take her into the mountains that day. Later that day, Blind Johnny received a call from Central High School, where Teresa attended, asking where she had been that day because she did not attend school. Instead of being alarmed and asking where Teresa was or telling them that Teresa was missing because she should be at school, Blind Johnny told the school that she had been home sick that day. And it was alleged that he did look for Teresa in the hours that followed, but wouldn't you call the police when your child's missing? Like, I know it's not his kid, that's technically his niece, but still, you think you'd call the cops when the school reports that she's not there and you have no idea where she is. But then again, Blind Johnny was a terrible person and was also probably high at the time, so can't expect too much of him. But there is some hope for him because at 9:30 p.m. on the same day, he did in fact file a police report saying that Teresa was in fact missing and he had no clue where she was. Once the police had caught wind that Teresa was missing, they decided to catch up with the last person who had seen her, which was Skip. When they talked to Skip, Skip had told them that the last time he had seen Teresa was around 7:20 p.m. on June 1st. He told police that they had been camping near Shut-Eye Peak, approximately 25 miles northeast of Bass Lake in the Sierra Nevada mountain range. He also told them that him and Teresa had been looking for Bigfoot, and that was the reason for their visit to the camping site. Which, if you don't know what Bigfoot is, the description of Bigfoot that Google has given me is a large, hairy, ape-like creature resembling a yeti, supposedly found in northwestern America. And basically, it walks on two legs, it's big, it's hairy, it's scary, not to rhyme there, but that's what Bigfoot is in case you didn't already know. Bigfoot was Skip's obsession. He had claimed to have seen Bigfoot many a times. He had claimed to leave offerings for Bigfoot. His whole personality was just, he loved Bigfoot, and I mean really loved Bigfoot. Which, if I'm being completely honest, throughout my research, I've learned that the town of Fresno in the 80s was like obsessed with Bigfoot. They loved this legend. It was ingrained with everything they did and knew. They just loved Bigfoot. At least from what I could see in my research. If I'm wrong, if anybody's from Fresno, sound off in the comments. Skip had claimed to see Bigfoot around this area many of times, and that's why he took Teresa there. And when originally asked about what happened to Teresa, he told them that she had run away from him. But later on, when being asked about it, he told police, and I quote, "Bigfoot took her," end quote. This was in the police reports and in the newspapers and in all the reportings of this. He genuinely told police that Bigfoot had taken her. Which, the notion of Bigfoot taking people wasn't exactly uncommon at this time period, especially in California, Washington, New Mexico. People genuinely believed that Bigfoot would kidnap people, especially in mountain ranges or national parks. There's a whole series, it's called Missing 411 by David Paulides, and a lot of those cases are people who've gone missing in national parks, and one of the theories for most of those cases is that Bigfoot took them. So it wasn't uncommon, and still isn't uncommon, for people to somewhat believe that Bigfoot is out there and taking people. I do just want to dive a little bit into Skip's interesting past with taking people up to look for Bigfoot. And when I mean taking people, I mostly mean young girls or young teenagers. It wasn't uncommon for Skip to take people up into the Sierra Nevada mountain range to look for Bigfoot. And there's multiple witness accounts and multiple accounts in general stating that he would take teenagers or teenage girls up into these mountains to look for Bigfoot, and he often took them to a place called Ghost Canyon. Now, Ghost Canyon isn't a place that you're going to find on a map because it wasn't a real landmark. It wasn't like Bass Lake or a campground or an actual canyon that was named that. It was just something that Skip and locals had named. So when looking for it on a map, you would not be able to find it. And that's sort of why Skip was the tour guide of sorts, because he knew where Ghost Canyon was, which is where a lot of people believed Bigfoot could be seen. Like, if you were looking for Bigfoot, you wanted to see Bigfoot, Skip was your guy. He's going to take you to Ghost Canyon, and he's going to show you Bigfoot. And a lot of people do say that when they went up there with Skip, they did feel like they were being watched, or that they did see like a shadow or something. And so he was considered a credible tour guide for seeing Bigfoot. One of these instances where he took a young girl up into the mountains to see Bigfoot was that of a girl named Michelle. And if you want to see her testimony of this more clearly, I would recommend watching the documentary that was put out about this. It's on Discovery Plus. It's called Bigfoot Took Her. It was actually really good, and it's what sparked my interest in this case. So if you want to go see her account of this and hear everything that she has to say, I would go watch that because it was really, really good. Michelle was in her teen years at the time, and Skip had offered to go ahead and take her up into the mountains. Michelle had been friends with Skip's daughter, who was around her age, and so Michelle felt comfortable enough going up with Skip to go look for Bigfoot. A lot of people had advised her against this, saying that it was unsafe, that the terrain was treacherous, that Skip was kind of a weirdo, and they just got bad vibes from the whole thing. But ultimately, she decided to go anyway. And it was also said that his daughter was supposed to go with her, but then right before they left, he decided that his daughter could not go for whatever reason. But two of Michelle's male friends decided that they were not going to let her go alone and went with her, which would definitely be a good decision even today. If you are going somewhere, even if it's like on a date or something, at least tell somebody where you're going and give them your location, or bring somebody with you, because honestly, going with a strange man up into the woods is just dangerous. Going with a strange man anywhere is just dangerous, so please be safe. I don't want to hear about anything happening to you guys. On the night that they were camping here, Michelle alleged to have seen apparitions of something white with red eyes. She said she felt very like she was being watched, and there was things in the trees, and there was evil, and she decided to curl up in her sleeping bag because that's what Skip told her to do, so she tried. And then she also says that she woke up, felt like someone was going to kill her, started screaming that someone was going to kill her, and ran towards a cliff edge. Thankfully, her two friends who were there with her did pull her back from the cliff's edge and make sure that she did not fall off, and eventually calmed her down, and she was okay. But Skip, during this, sat there calmly and just said Bigfoot possessed her, that she had been possessed, and that's what happens up here, that Bigfoot does that to people, and this place does that to people. So Michelle writes the whole thing off as being very scary and very traumatizing, and she says that she knows what she saw, and she knows what she felt, and a lot of people, upon hearing what she said, believes that maybe she was drugged, and knowing Skip's past with methamphetamines and all that stuff, believe that maybe she very well was drugged, and that maybe that was Skip's MO, taking young girls up there and drugging them and giving them this Bigfoot experience that he claimed. So it was just sort of an interesting account that I thought I should share, because it happened before Teresa went missing, and you have to think about what would have happened if Michelle had not brought those friends. Would she have fallen off that cliff? Would Skip have let her fall off that cliff? Would Skip maybe have done something else to her? was she actually drugged, or was she seeing Bigfoot? You know, it was all these different things that are eerily similar to Teresa's disappearance and what we know about Teresa's disappearance. It's just, the similarities are very odd, almost. Like, uncanny, really. Now, if we time skip to after Teresa's disappearance, on June 5th, Skip's car, a 1976 Monte Carlo, was seen parked outside of a trailer park in North Fork, California. He was allegedly visiting a friend, Dorothy Davis, which, side note, the name Dorothy Davis, I absolutely love that. That's such a cute name. Nothing to do with the case, but I just thought I should put that out there. Dorothy later recounts to police that Skip showed up at her door sort of agitated, upset, and possibly high on something, which, based on what we know about Skip this far, is probably meth. Seems like everybody in this town's just dealing or doing meth. Dorothy also alleged that Skip had told her that and I quote, "Up in the mountains, he left a little girl because a satanic group had taken control of her and physically changed her into something all white looking," end quote. Which, by the way, I'm sorry if my friend showed up at my door acting strange and told me that. I'm going to the police immediately. I don't care how good of friends we are. No, I don't like that. I don't want to know. I don't want to know anything about a satanic cult. Nothing. Little girl in the woods. I'm calling the cops. Okay, I am calling them immediately. That's also not me blaming Dorothy, because obviously she couldn't have known what happened. I'm just saying, like, that must have been crazy to hear as just someone who has no idea what's going on. Like, just your friend showing up at your door being like, little girl in the woods, satanic cult. Like, that would just be, honestly, kind of scary. Roughly about a week after that incident, Blind Johnny allegedly received a threatening phone call from a young girl stating, and I quote, "Skip was packing a pistol, and if you continue to make more trouble for him, you'll have trouble from him. Even your kids will get hurt. Tell the police that Skip had taken Teresa to school, dropped her off, and some unknown blonde picked her up." End quote. Days after this, police picked Skip up from his mother's residence in Sunnyside neighborhood of Fresno. At the police station is where he gave multiple accounts of that day, and his main and final account to police was that Bigfoot had taken the girl, and, quote, "she would be happier than before because they are super intelligent beings," end quote. Which, what? There's a little girl missing. Even if he is innocent, there's a little girl missing right now. I don't think this is the time to tell him, well, Bigfoot took her, she'll be happy. No, that's not... What? After a little bit of convincing from the police, Skip eventually decided to take them to the alleged campground where he had last been with Teresa. He led them to a small grove of trees at a meadow's edge along Browns Creek. At the inner part of this campsite, there was a fire pit that was still smoldering, and there was blankets hung up, which, in the police reports, they talk about these blankets for far too long. They really focused on these blankets. Something about these blankets didn't sit right with them. They kept saying how they were weird, and they were in weird formations, and they looked weird, and these blankets were just freaking weird. Along with these strange blankets, there was a camera, an off-white bra, a t-shirt, and a lot of different Polaroids strewn about. Some of the countryside, some of Skip playing guitar, some of Teresa, all seemingly normal pictures you would take on a camping trip. After some suspicion from the cops, as well as Skip's odd behavior, because when they were looking at this campsite, Skip seemed almost upset, almost sad, like he almost wanted to cry, like he was very distraught. So some of the officers started to think that maybe this campsite was a little too good to be true. It looked almost set up, if you will. And when they examined these Polaroids, they found that that was most likely true, because the topography in these Polaroids were showing about 20 miles away, possibly in a location closer to the Ghost Canyon location that Skip typically brought people to see Bigfoot. After police found this, they did a helicopter search of both areas to try to find evidence of Teresa's last known whereabouts or anything that would connect to her or even Teresa herself, but these searches led to no further evidence on Teresa's disappearance, only a shirt of Skip's that had a thing of meth in the pocket, which he was charged for, obviously. When it didn't turn up any evidence about Teresa's disappearance, they started interviewing people who knew Skip, knew Blind Johnny, all that stuff, and one of Skip's relatives told authorities that Skip had told them of a rock in Ghost Canyon where a girl needed to be tied up and sacrificed to the devil. Which, once again, what is up with Skip and just saying weird crap? Like, he's making everybody in his family and friend group uncomfortable. Skip was eventually charged with the kidnapping and abduction of Teresa, but the charges were soon after dropped due to lack of concrete evidence in October of 1987. After this, he was offered a deal by police that if he showed them where Teresa was, or if he told them what had happened to Teresa and there was evidence to back it up, that he would only serve a sentence of 1 year in prison. But Skip denied this, which, why? I'm sorry. That seems like the best get out of jail free card you could have, but what do I know? You'd serve more time for doing meth, man. Like, come on now. But either way, he denied this offer and stuck to his story that Bigfoot took Teresa, and he died still keeping on with that story, that Bigfoot took the girl and she was gone, and he had no way of knowing what happened to her. That's what he stuck with. And that is all we know about the Theresa Ann Bier case, but I do want to talk about some of the theories that people have as to what happened to her. First and foremost, Bigfoot taking her. I think this is probably the most unlikely of all of them, not because Bigfoot isn't real or whatever. If you believe in Bigfoot, that's fine. I think Bigfoot very well could exist scientifically, but I just don't think, with all of the weirdness surrounding this case and all of the possible other suspects, that Bigfoot took her. I really, truly don't. Also, if Bigfoot did take her and kill her, there'd be some evidence of that. It wouldn't be so well hidden. Bigfoot isn't out here kidnapping people and hiding bodies, okay? Our second suspect is Skip, which seems to be the most obvious suspect because he was the last person to be seen with her. He took her out in the woods. His story keeps changing. He keeps telling people weird crap. He's just a strange fella who is very suspect. Very, very suspect. Another suspect that people believe could have something to do with this is Blind Johnny. Some people believe that maybe Blind Johnny knew what was going to happen up in those woods, or paid Skip off to do something to Teresa in those woods, or sold her to Skip as some payment or something like that for a meth deal, because they both were alleged to be doing meth at the time, and Blind Johnny wasn't above selling the girls to pay off debts. Another suspicion that people have is maybe she got lost up there. She got separated from him, and she lost her way, and Skip just didn't know what to do, and he panicked, and he said Bigfoot took her, because maybe in his meth-filled brain he did truly believe that Bigfoot took her. Some people believe that maybe something happened to her up in those woods. Like, maybe she fell or got hurt, because the terrain around Ghost Canyon, where she was alleged to be, was very rocky, very hard for a grown man, let alone a teenage girl. And Michelle did account to this, that the terrain was not good up there. So maybe something happened to her, and Skip covered it up and just told him that Bigfoot took her. Another thing that Skip's daughter believes could be true is that Teresa was the victim of the spree-free killers, which, if you want me to do a deep dive on that, please let me know down below, because I would be willing to. But basically, they are 2 motorcycle meth heads that drove around California on back roads, finding girls to kidnap, sexually assault, and later kill. So Skip's own daughter believes that Teresa may have been a victim of these 2 killers. She also says that her version of her dad that she knew and loved was very different than a lot of other people's. Her interview for this case is so just breathtaking to me, and if you haven't seen the documentary, you should definitely go watch it, because the way she carries herself is so magnificent and so just well-spoken, and you can really tell that she just wants this case solved, whether it's her father or it's not her father. She just wants this case to have closure so she can rest her head on her pillow at night and know what happened to Theresa Ann Bier. Also, she says that she actually had a conversation with Teresa before her and her dad left to go up in the mountains, and said that her dad was trying to get Teresa help, and Teresa was telling Skip's daughter that Skip was going to help her get out of town and go to the next town over and get to the police station so she could escape the abuse of Blind Johnny, which honestly makes this whole thing so much sadder to me, because if that's true and she really believed that this was her way out and this was her way to get help and this was her way to escape the terrible abusive situation that seemingly her whole life had been, let's be honest here, the girl couldn't catch a break. If she believed that this was her way out and she was going to be able to be free after this and get the help that she needed, that breaks my heart. It truly, truly breaks my heart, because something happened to her, and Teresa is no longer with us or was lost somewhere. And if she believed that she was getting help, and then her life ended tragically like that, it makes it all the more worse in my brain, because this was a little girl who had a terrible life from beginning to end. It just was rough. There was not a single point where she could catch a break, really. And it's just so saddening to me that we still don't know what happened to her. To this day, we don't know what happened to Teresa Ambiierre. We have no clue where she is. We have no body. We have no one charged. And this case is so hard because at this point it's really probably never going to be solved, because it's all witness accounts. There's no DNA. The suspects are all dead. All the leads have gone cold. So realistically, we might never know what happened to Teresa Ambiierre. But I would love if this case got solved, because it is one that keeps me up at night, and I mean really keeps me up at night. I think about it. I've thought about it since I watched the documentary, and doing research on it just made me delve deeper and deeper into this case. Also, she was only 16. She had so much life to give, and from the people who knew her, her friends, they said she was so bubbly and so happy, and just an amazing person that was taken from us far too soon. So I hope you enjoyed today's case, and I hope you tune in for the next one. I love all you guys. Stay safe, be safe, and have an amazing day.